Welcome to the Hot Seat powered by Affordable Staff. David Judge here, and we are at Season 1, Episode 2 of the Hot Seat, where we talk to industry influencers that have worked hands-on within the real estate industry. We find out where these influencers see current and future trends within the industry and what you can do about it to support and grow your business. Now, there are 9 episodes in the first season, and each episode is released every second Tuesday, guaranteed. Now, in this episode, we are interviewing Rose Kelly from Leading Focus, who has over 3 decades of experience within the industry. Now, there are so many points of discussion, so I'll just give you a couple of them. We chat property management around legislation in the 90s versus now, including the shift to a consumer-based type of legislation and how that's impacted the industry. Rose also discussed the importance of engagement, how to cut through that noise, and why we all need to get over technology. And finally, why struggling businesses don't understand their value proposition and what that means to property management roles in 2018 and beyond. Okay, now one more important point that I want to mention before we jump onto this episode. None of the businesses that we've interviewed are sponsors of the Hot Seat, and all are industry influencers and businesses they represent, and they've given their time to be on this show. Okay, awesome. I'm not going to make you wait anymore. It's a fantastic episode. So let's get into it and roll it. Hello and welcome. This is David from the Hot Seat, and I have here Damien with me. How are you, Damien?
Good, David. Good, David. How are you?
I'm good, and we have Rose.
Hi, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you for coming along. I really appreciate it. And I know that you and Damien have known each other for a little while.
Sure.
How long?
I think Damien's known me longer than I've known him, but I met Damien when I was working for a client.
Yes.
I had a client and Damien was employed there as a property manager. So we met in that space a few years ago now.
Fantastic. So let's jump straight into it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history in the industry?
Oh, gee. David, I run the risk of being known as a jack of all trades and master of none.
Yes.
But that's
sounds like me.
I started my real estate career after another career, which I was involved in adult education.
Yes.
So I was quite passionate about education and empowering people and developing people. So I got into real estate, loved that. I was in a regional town. I moved to Brisbane. I quickly got into the training space in real estate and I ended up working as a national sales trainer for the First National Group.
Yes.
But that's a very long time ago. It's like 30 years ago now. So over the years since then, I've been in and out of agency a few times. I've had my own business. I love sales and in fact I was an auctioneer. So in my last business, which I had for about 7 or 8 years, that was in Brisbane. I was the sales agent. But over the years, I originally got into property management by accident.
Yeah,
so
we hear fairly regularly.
I always say I got in there by default and stayed there by choice. So I ended up in property management because I think it was, I was a single mum. And it was back in 93.
Okay.
And in Brisbane. And I worked in a suburban agency. And it was just really difficult in those days to stay in sales when you're a single mum. It just we didn't even have mobile phones, let alone dial a nanny or that sort of thing. So I guess the industry's been good to me.
Yes.
There's been a range of things where I've been able to work and use my skills and develop my skills. And about 96 or 96, 97, the industry started to change in Queensland and there was a real desire for training. The national curriculum, in fact, up until 96 had never been brought to Queensland.
So what was the major change that happened?
I think there'd always been this sort of drive to get that national curriculum into Queensland and traineeships and get into the vet sector. The REIQ employed a wonderful man at that stage, Graham Capper, who came from outside the industry, and I ended up meeting him, and Robin McElwain and myself actually developed that curriculum and wrote it all and delivered it all. And I think that's where I met your first boss in real estate.
Probably.
Yeah. So, back in those days, I was very involved. I did a lot of the property management training.
Yes.
Because I'd had, this background in education. And it was also the change in legislation. So the first residential tenancies legislation came into place in 1996.
Yes.
In Queensland. Prior to that, there was pretty much no legislation. We had an old Rental Bond Act. But there was no legislation at all around consumers or how tenancies were managed or the rights and duties of obligations under tenancies. So that was a big impact. It was the beginning, was in fact the first piece of consumer-based legislation to come into real estate in Queensland, which, as in consumer-centric legislation, recognises the rights of both parties.
And do you think the change from a property management perspective, do you think that the changes that they've made in legislation are a good thing for property managers?
Oh, I never stand in judgment in that way. I just accept what is. I think when you see, I don't look at that in isolation. I think we need to understand where the world has gone in legislation. This is about human rights.
Yes.
We're in a different world to what we were in the 70s and the 80s. So, that's filtered right down across all pieces of legislation in Australia. It's not the residential tenancies legislation of Queensland. And I think people have to, sometimes a very micro view of things based on their own environment. But legislation is good in that it gives us a framework. What a lot of people didn't like was the shift to the consumer base style of legislation. So why should tenants have rights? But, that was really preempting. I mean, look at how far we've come. That was 96. 2018, 20 plus years later, the master-servant relationship is history, isn't it?
Yes.
We've seen it in politics, we see it in royalty, we see it in the church, we see people just don't want to be told what to do anymore. So for landlords to be the master and tenants to be the servant, for business, we see it in employment, we see it everywhere.
Yes.
So I think it's pretty fair to say you've worn many different hats in real estate.
Yeah, sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there.
Which is your favourite hat?
Which is my favourite hat? Well, I'm in the current space that I'm in by choice, so I'd say that's my favourite hat.
And
this is developing people. So developing people, I've worked a lot in training, a lot in development, but now I want to work with business owners. So I have a passion for entrepreneurship. I have a passion for business. I love business. And I would love to, and I just enjoy working with business owners who want to advance their business.
So what are you seeing as the challenges now in real estate? So you're out there in the field every day of the week. What are you seeing as the challenges? And I suppose looking forward the next couple of years, what are the disruptors that you're seeing coming into the industry, or how are we going to evolve over the next 2 to 5 years in what you're seeing?
Well, I'm not a guru, but I'll have a go at answering that.
Yes.
I think we all struggle with one thing, and that's engagement. And, we're in very busy spaces where there is a lot of noise. It doesn't matter. In my business, there's a lot of noise. I'm sure there's a lot of noise in your business. There's a lot of noise in a real estate business. And I'm talking background noise. So to cut through and to get engagement and to hold that engagement, I think will be the biggest challenge. The industry must shift, particularly property management, away from its obsession with process. Whether it's outsourced or it's done by robots, that's not my issue, but we've got to get process absolutely streamlined and over there in the corner happening, and remember what our core business is, and that is to act as an agent for someone.
Yes.
So, how do we develop that agency relationship? It's an account management role. It's interesting when I talk to business, do a lot of businesses where we are moving the admin and moving the back end away, and property managers don't know what to do with themselves because they're so obsessed with process. And some of that's been driven by legislation, litigation, compliance, risk, simply getting the KPIs, all sorts of things. I understand all of that, the money, the numbers, all of those things. But at the end of the day, we need to really develop, get back and develop those personal relationship skills.
It seems to have been a common thread that we've had over the last these is that we're in a human industry.
Yeah. And there's always the concern that the human element's going to be lost. And I think, like in any industry, if you try to remove the human element, then you remove the value from that industry. And we've heard Malcolm beforehand talking about the race to the bottom with the reduction in rental fees and in sales commissions. And I think that if you can always identify yourself as a human or a personality in the marketplace, I can see how you can actually add value, especially if you're creating yourself as an authority. What are your thoughts around?
Look, it's understanding our value proposition.
Yes.
First of all, but when I look at businesses that are struggling and having problems, they don't really understand that. Their staff don't really understand what their true role is. I have been battling this for years in the training space.
Yes.
Getting people to really understand that we are there as an agent for the owner of the property. We are there to provide a service for the tenant. What are those expectations of landlords and tenants? And I've just become a landlord myself, and it's been an interesting experience because I know what the tenants want, and I've offered that to the agent, and they've not taken up.
Yes.
I mean, Optus did a research paper on this 3 years ago in Australia. They researched the needs of tenants, and they found the number one need of a tenant that's unmet moving into a property. The number one pain point is connecting to the internet. And you talk to 9 out of 10 property managers and they don't want to know about that story.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's too difficult and we can't understand, or it's not our thing. And yet it's their number one need.
So when I was working in manufacturing, we looked at rolling out a number of different programs to assist people from the front line, if you were to call it that. We were introducing a number of the different models around, and the people that were actually working in the business, they were really very, very proactive. But we had a lot of issues with management and the people that were at the top because it wasn't flowing down. The message wasn't flowing down. Do you think that's similar in the real estate and property management industry? I know,
I
it's
think
called
that's
the hot
a
seat.
can of worms, isn't it?
That's why this is called the hot seat.
I hear this is the hot seat. Well, there is no mystery around the fact that majority of businesses in this country are still small businesses.
Yes.
And they are largely owned by people who I would consider to be technicians. So, there are 3 levels. There's technician, manager and entrepreneur.
Yes.
And they're still pretty much doing in the business. And when they do, they think sales. So when you talk about filtering down, they often don't even speak the same language, let alone have the right filters and the right flow. And I say this to business owners all the time. I say, how's your business going? Oh, we leased X number of properties. What if that wasn't the most important thing?
Yes.
What about how many times did your landlords have a negative experience around anything in the last 6 months? And how do you measure that? And how does that accumulate? And how does that affect their stickiness as a client? And how does that affect your churn rate? And then they start going, oh, well, what should I be looking at? What should that be about? So I don't think they quite understand the same language even. But that's changing. That's changing, and we are seeing, certainly the development of a bigger end in town in real estate businesses and particularly rent rolls. So with that, people have had to develop leadership skills. The interesting thing is that I think the leadership skills that are going to be needed will be quite different.
Yes.
And they'll be about leading people through this, what we would sometimes call the soft selling or the soft skills part of the business. But it's such an important part, that relationship management, and managing that and leading people in those teams will be quite challenging.
So that would be your advice to business owners to, let's say, moving forward in the coming years, that would be your advice to business owners to have a look at how it is? Like, what would be that advice that you would give?
I would say stay close to your clients, Get close to your clients, find out what your clients are really experiencing and want from you, and look at innovative ways to deliver that. Now, it's not always about technology. It's
technology is the buzz, isn't it? Really,
it is the buzz.
I don't think it. Being in business for a number of years now and having and owning a number of different businesses, you always have to have some sort of buzz, that your buzzword or buzz things that you're focusing about. Everything goes in cycles, and I think it always comes back to the same thing around developing relationships and showing yourself as an authority. And
But I think when people talk about technology, it's like it's that thing that's over there that's just arrived and we'll get over it. Clearly that's not the case. It's now a new way of life. I have a 22-year-old daughter who's never lived beyond her first 6 weeks in a disconnected house. So she doesn't have any sense of what is this thing called technology.
Yes.
It's her life. It's connected. And so we need to get over technology and really go back to the heart of what we're doing, and that is we are acting on behalf of people. Now, how might they want to engage us, have relationships with us? I do think there is, a huge trend around hyperlocal and creating that real sense of community or tribe. I think that, there needs to be some really innovative ways around how those connections are made, perhaps using some technology, perhaps using the connectedness that we can get. I can remember doing a presentation on this in Adelaide at a conference almost 20 years ago, high tech, high touch. And I think about those words.
Yes.
High tech, high touch. And, I don't know why we were talking about it 20 years ago. It took us, so to me, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and I was saying to Damien that VR headsets, like there's things that, and augmented reality, they're like the big thing that people are talking about now. My dad was an internet service provider before Telstra and Optus came around. So back when everyone used to dial in, and they were talking about these VR headsets back then. So the technology is always around. I think it's how we use it.
One of the mistakes that agents have made, and I think it's actually fired up the industry quite a bit, is this sort of sense of propriety over information.
Yes.
And I still see some distrust around data. I see some angst around, that's our data, that's our information. So I think people have got to get over that concept, that there is this kind of seamless sea of data.
Yeah.
And certainly there are elements of that which are proprietary to a business, but, property information is public data. It's public information. It's just how it's packaged now.
Fantastic.
Well, what's going on in your business?
Oh, my business now?
Yeah.
So what am I doing now?
Yeah.
I have moved into a new business, Leading Focus. It's all about helping the business journey and the business owner to accelerate their journey. So business accelerator, if you like, specifically in real estate space at the moment. So working with business owners, I do a lot of discovery, what I call discovery. So we go in and do a business analysis or audit and then look at where they're stuck.
Yep.
So what are their sticking points and help them speed through that. So, I'm not a marketing guru, I'm not a technology guru, but I've got a lot of connections and I've got a lot of points that I can bring to that business.
Yes.
And that's worked really well for businesses from start-up to established businesses. And I'm also doing some training in-house, some small workshops and, consulting where needed.
So how do people get a hold of you if they want to get in contact?
They want to get in contact with me. It's really simple. My business is Leading Focus, so it's rose@leadingfocus.com.au. Keep
Fantastic.
it easy.
Rose, Kelly, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the interview.
Sorry, I don't know if I answered all the questions. I do.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm passionate about this.
And we have a slight distraction of a squeaky background. The guys next door. But that's fine. Really appreciate the time and thank you again for everything you've been in the industry for a while. So thank you for everything you do and how you're leading and directing the industry as well. So
great. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
And I hope the conference goes well for you and good luck with your business.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good on you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we'll talk soon. Okay, thank you for listening to the episode with Rose. And before you go, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the episode that you subscribe to our podcast, which you can search for The Hot Seat wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can leave a review as they really count. You can also visit us at thehotseat.com.au, where we have each of the episodes posted every week or every second week as they come out. I also wanted to remind you that The Hot Seat is powered by Affordable Staff, and if I'm 100% honest, we could not put The Hot Seat together without outsourcing every component. We literally record our footage and audio, and we send it to our Philippines office, and they do the rest. So thank you to our team, especially Ira. Okay, great. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Hot Seat.